Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to explore the story of a little girl who went to the school stadium with her parents to watch a soccer match. During the game, her parents suddenly realized that their daughter was no longer there and immediately started searching for her. The police quickly joined the search, but little did they know that this investigation would uncover a chilling truth that would shake the entire town. Gabby Duan was born on December 26, 2007, in a small town called Scottsville, Kentucky, with a population of just over 4,000 people. Scottsville is primarily an agricultural community, where many residents know each other, or at least know someone from each local family. Like many small towns, Scottsville doesn't offer many. The school has a fairly good facility to host football, baseball, and tennis events, regularly holding games and tournaments. This has become a local tradition, especially when their children participate in the events. Gabby's family is no exception. Her parents have 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. The oldest son plays on the school's football. In November 2015, when Gabby was 7 years old, the town was preparing for the biggest game of the year. The school's team was getting ready to face a team from another district, and everyone was eagerly anticipating the event. Gabby's older brother was playing on the team, but Gabby was more interested in playing with her friends than watching the game. Initially, her parents planned to leave Gabby at home with her younger brother under the care of a relative. However, Gabby managed to convince them. On the evening of November 14th, they arrived at the school stadium. In addition to the locals, many people from surrounding districts came to watch the game and cheer on their teams. When they arrived, Gabby saw her friends and asked her mother if she could go play with them. Gabby's mother agreed, but told her to stay within the school grounds and play with her friends. Afterward, she went back to the bleachers while Gabby ran off to join her friends. Throughout the evening, Gabby ran back and forth between her mother and her friends before returning to play. At one point, she stopped by her father in the announcer's booth to ask for money to buy a snack at the concession stand, then quickly ran off. After some time, Gabby's friends ran up to the bleachers to meet her mother. When her mother looked at the group, she immediately noticed that Gabby was not in it. The girls anxiously asked if she had seen Gabby. Her mother replied that she hadn't seen her daughter in a while. She asked what was going on, and Gabby's friends explained that they had been playing hide and seek. Gabby was the seeker, and they had hidden in the restroom. But as time passed, Gabby hadn't shown up. Thinking they had one, the group left their hiding spots to look for Gabby, but they couldn't find her. They called out Gabby's name, checked every place the group had played earlier, but it seemed she had vanished without a trace. Thinking she might have gone to the stands to find her mother, they rushed to inform her. Upon hearing this, Gabby's mother panicked and ran to find her husband to report the news. But Gabby wasn't there either. She told her husband that Gabby was missing, and he immediately began searching around the stadium. Meanwhile, Gabby's mother headed to the concession stand, where Gabby had mentioned buying snacks, to look for her. While searching, they informed friends about Gabby's disappearance. Upon hearing the news, these friends joined in the search effort. After combing the area around the stadium and finding no sign of Gabby, her parents returned to make an announcement over the PA system, hoping she might hear it. Unfortunately, this too yielded no results. At this point, halftime was ending, and spectators were returning to the stands. Gabby's parents continued asking if anyone had seen her, and some decided to help in the search. They went outside the stadium again, asking staff to shine flashlights around the baseball field leading to a small wooded area. Adults ventured into the woods, but still couldn't find Gabby. By now, about 20 minutes had passed since her disappearance, prompting her parents to call the police. Officers quickly arrived at the school, listened to Gabby's parents and friends, and began the search. Being a small town, the local police had little experience dealing with severe cases like a missing child. As such incidents were rare, they immediately considered the worst-case scenario. Gabby might have been abducted or attacked. The most pressing concern was that the perpetrator could still be at the stadium, watching the game, which was about to end. This meant they had very little time before the suspect could escape into the departing crowd. The police decided to halt the game and locked down the stadium, keeping everyone inside. Officers guarded each exit to prevent anyone from sneaking away. However, they didn't disclose the real reason for this measure to avoid panic or interference with the search. If people knew the police suspected a 7-year-old girl's abductor might be among them, the situation could quickly spiral out of control. Meanwhile, state police arrived at the school and expanded the search area. They moved through the baseball field and deeper into the woods. After a while, they came upon a small stream where they discovered Gabby's body. The officers immediately called for an ambulance to transport the body to the medical examiner's office. At first glance, they determined the cause of death was likely asphyxiation, as there were clear marks on her neck. Some of Gabby's clothing was also missing, leading police to suspect she might have been sexually assaulted. When Gabby's mother saw the ambulance near the woods, she assumed the police had found her daughter and that Gabby needed medical attention. She ran toward the vehicle, but officers stopped her, unwilling to let her witness the horrific scene. Now that the case had escalated to a murder investigation, police decided to move everyone from the stadium to the school gymnasium to maintain control. Investigators believed the killer could still be among the crowd, so they needed to quickly identify a suspect. They spoke with Gabby's parents, explaining what might have happened to her. Investigators also asked if her parents suspected anyone who might have committed this heinous act, or if they had received any threats or noticed anyone suspicious. However, Gabby's parents said they had no clues and no idea who could have done this. Detectives then questioned Gabby's friends, asking if they had noticed anything unusual that night, such as someone watching or paying attention to them. But the girls didn't recall anything strange. Police brought Gabby's friends into the gymnasium and asked them to carefully observe everyone present, hoping they might recognize someone suspicious. But this effort yielded no results. The lead investigators still believed Gabby's friends might have seen the abductor but were either too scared to speak up or, because of their age, didn't realize the significance of what they had observed. He continued asking them for every detail of the evening. Finally, one of Gabby's friends remembered seeing a man near the restroom while they were hiding. However, she couldn't recall much about his appearance, except that he was wearing a denim jacket. The police spoke to the ticket seller for the game, who also remembered seeing a man in a denim jacket holding something in his hand. The seller remarked that the man seemed a bit odd and possibly intoxicated. However, police were still unable to identify him at that moment. As the interviews continued, word spread about why the police had gathered everyone in the gymnasium. People began to realize that the killer might be in the same room. This realization caused panic, especially among parents, but most remained cooperative and answered the police's questions. Officers cross-referenced the names of all the men in the gym with a list of registered sex offenders, but found no matches. They also sent officers to the homes of several known offenders living near the school, but all had solid alibis and none were near the school that evening. Meanwhile, officers continued interviewing people at the school and soon received notable tips. Several individuals mentioned seeing a man named Timothy Madden near the women's restroom during the game. Acting suspiciously, Timothy was a local resident. So many people knew him, but according to witnesses, his behavior that night was unusual. They also noted that he was wearing a denim jacket. Initially, Timothy denied involvement, but soon admitted to speaking with Gabby that evening near the stadium. According to Timothy, he had gone outside to smoke, and a group of girls ran by. Then, Gabby passed him and asked if he had seen her friends, explaining that they were playing hide and seek, and she was looking for them. Timothy claimed he had pointed her in a direction, and she ran off. The detectives became suspicious of Timothy due to how quickly he changed his story. This raised questions about whether he was trying to hide something. His testimony matched certain details provided by Gabby's friend, who had seen a man near the restroom and described him as wearing a denim jacket. Additionally, another witness, a distant relative of Timothy, reported that he had behaved unusually during the game. Normally, Timothy was deeply engaged in his son's athletic performance, but that evening, he appeared distracted and spaced out, paying little attention to the game. Other witnesses also told police that Timothy's behavior that night seemed odd, prompting investigators to decide they needed to question him further. By then, it was nighttime, and the police had to release most of the individuals present at the school. They decided to approach Timothy directly, but first consulted the local sheriff about him. The sheriff, who had known Timothy almost his entire life, expressed doubt that Timothy could commit such a crime. Timothy had virtually no criminal record aside from a few traffic violations and had never been involved in suspicious activities before. Timothy lived with his wife and 5 children. The police went straight to his home. When they knocked on his door, Timothy answered, and the officers asked if he knew why they were there. He responded that he had heard about the girl's murder, but insisted he had nothing to do with it. The detectives employed a psychological tactic and posed a leading question. They claimed to have video footage from witnesses showing him talking to Gabby just before her murder and asked him to explain. In reality, there was no such footage or witness, but the question was designed to elicit more information if Timothy was indeed involved. Initially, Timothy said he knew nothing, but he quickly changed his story. He admitted to meeting Gabby that evening, talking to her, and giving her directions before she ran off. This explanation, along with Timothy's changing story, deepened the detectives' suspicion. They decided to investigate further to find evidence either implicating or exonerating him. DNA test results would prove pivotal, taking the case to a critical turning point. Back in the investigation, Timothy's story grew more questionable. His testimony indicated that he spoke with Gabby just minutes before her disappearance, at a time when no other witnesses were outside the stadium. This provided an opportunity for him to commit the crime without being seen. The detectives also asked Timothy how he would explain if his DNA were found on the victim's body. Timothy calmly replied that he had no explanation to offer. Finally, they asked him to provide a DNA sample and the clothes he wore that evening. Timothy agreed to both requests. However, when Timothy handed over his clothes, the officers noticed several suspicious stains. His pants, denim jacket, and even his underwear had stains resembling blood. When questioned, Timothy claimed the police were imagining things and that the stains were ordinary dirt. Nevertheless, the police remained unconvinced and decided to await DNA analysis before making an arrest. Although this was a priority case, analyzing the DNA samples would take several days. Meanwhile, the coroner completed the autopsy, confirming that Gabby's cause of death was strangulation by hand. They also confirmed she had been brutally sexually assaulted, and biological samples from the perpetrator were sent to the lab. The day after the murder, an unexpected event occurred. The police received an anonymous letter accusing a suspicious individual who had been at the game. The letter included details about the suspect's vehicle and even the license plate number, enabling the police to quickly identify the vehicle's owner. The vehicle belonged to a college student living about a 30-minute drive from Scottsville. The police interrogated him, but he insisted he had not attended the game and knew nothing about the murder. He further stated that he was at work that evening, and the police found solid evidence corroborating his alibi. He was quickly eliminated as a suspect. The anonymous letter puzzled the police. It could have been an attempt to frame someone or simply a prank, but the student was entirely innocent. The letter's author was never identified. However, the young man truly had no involvement. Shortly after, the police received another lead. Several people reported strange behavior by a 16-year-old local boy. The boy had told various people that he was at the game, only to later claim he hadn't attended. He also mentioned seeing girls playing hide and seek. Detectives discovered that the boy was Timothy Madden's son. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. 2 weeks before the murder, the boy had reportedly held a knife to his father's throat in anger, threatening to kill him. Armed with this knowledge, the police attempted to interview the boy, but they encountered a legal roadblock. A parent's consent was required, and his mother refused to provide a DNA sample. This left the police at a standstill. In Scottsville, a small town where everyone knew one another, rumors spread like wildfire. Residents speculated that the Madden family was under investigation for Gabby's murder, leading to various theories. Some believed one of Timothy's troubled sons might be the culprit, while others suspected Timothy himself or thought he was covering up for his children. Gabby's parents also heard these rumors, which deeply shocked them. Gabby's father had known Timothy since 3rd grade and was familiar with his family. Their sons played on the same football team, and their daughters were cheerleaders together. The families were close, often sitting near each other during games. Given all this, Gabby's parents struggled to believe that someone in their circle could be involved in her murder. After the rumors spread throughout the town, another event occurred. The eldest son of the Madden family, aged 20, began contacting local officers via social media. He used obscene language and threatened them, demanding they leave his family alone. He was immediately arrested for these threats, and the police quickly discovered that there was an active warrant for his arrest in another town. It turned out he was suspected of assaulting a teenage girl. When questioned, the young man claimed that he was just frustrated with the accusations against his family. He also stated that he had no involvement in the murder case. That evening, he was at his cousin's house in the neighboring town. He agreed to provide a DNA sample, which was sent to the lab. On November 20th, 6 days after the murder, Gabby's funeral took place. Hundreds of people came to say their goodbyes, not just from Scottsville, but from other towns as well. People donated a large sum of money to help Gabby's family cover the funeral expenses. Meanwhile, the lab completed the DNA analysis and compared the semen and blood samples with the DNA of Timothy and his son. The results showed a complete match. The semen found on the victim's body belonged to Timothy Madden, and the blood on his clothes belonged to Gabby. Upon receiving this information, the detectives went to the funeral. When Gabby's parents were alone, they informed them about the discovery of the perpetrator. At the same time, police arrived at Timothy's house, and he was arrested. While being transported from the police station, he shouted at the gathered reporters that he was innocent. He later claimed that the blood on his clothes was his own because he had scratched himself while going through a fence, even though initially, as we recall, he had told police that it wasn't blood but mud. With the DNA results in hand, the investigators brought the case to court. The prosecutor announced that they would seek the death penalty. While preparing for the trial, Timothy's lawyer insisted that his client was innocent and that there were many questionable aspects regarding the origin of the evidence. He argued that at the time of the crime, Timothy was at the stadium filming the game, even though Timothy himself had told police that he had seen Gabby at that moment. The lawyer also tried to point out that Gabby's body was found in a creek, yet his client's clothes were dry when he returned to the stadium. Timothy's mother, who lived with him, stated that Timothy came home in clean clothes, with no signs of anxiety, and acted normally. However, the prosecutor pointed out that all these arguments collapsed in light of the fact that the suspect's semen had been found on the victim's body, and there could be no other explanation for this. Thus, there was no doubt about Timothy's involvement. According to the police, his statement about that evening contained part of the truth. In fact, he may have left the stadium while the game was still going on and encountered Gabby, who was looking for friends. Gabby knew Timothy very well because he was the father of one of her friends. She might have approached him and asked where the other girls had gone, and that might have been when he came up with his plan. He could have said they ran into the woods behind the baseball field and offered to take Gabby there, a few hundred meters from the school. He may have attacked and killed her, then returned to the game. The wait for the trial lasted many years, which was very frustrating for Gabby's family. They wanted the killer to be punished, but due to the administrative process, the case progressed very slowly. In 2019, for years after the murder, discussions began about the possibility of a plea deal. The prosecutor offered to drop the death penalty if Timothy pleaded guilty and accepted a life sentence. Gabby's parents agreed to the offer because the endless wait for the trial had been an unbearable burden on them. Furthermore, if the trial began, they would have to attend hearings for months, almost reliving their daughter's death. Timothy, who still insisted on his innocence, finally agreed and confessed his guilt. However, the terms of the deal did not require him to reveal the details of what he had done, only to plead guilty. This did not satisfy Gabby's family, as they wanted the perpetrator to fully confess to what he had done to their daughter. During the trial, Gabby's father began yelling at Timothy, while the defendant's relatives also began shouting at Gabby's family. Finally, the judge had to pause the trial and separate them. In the end, Timothy received a life sentence and was sent to a maximum security prison. But that wasn't all. In 2016, a year after Gabby's murder. Another incident involving Timothy Madden occurred. A boy from a nearby state watched the news about the case and recognized Timothy. A few years earlier, the boy and a friend had been walking near a shopping mall parking lot when an adult man approached them. The man tried to convince them to get in his car for a ride, but they found the offer strange. Both children ran away from him, and the boy's friend's relatives contacted the police. According to the boy who watched the news, the man was Timothy Madden. However, there was no clear evidence for this case, so it didn't progress further. Nevertheless, if Timothy truly attempted to kidnap two boys in another state, it could help us better understand his true nature. Perhaps before killing Gabby, he had tried to find other victims but failed. And that evening, when Gabby approached him near the stadium, he decided to seize the opportunity to satisfy his twisted desires. Please share your thoughts on this story in the comments. And don't forget to hit the like button if you liked my video. Thank you for following along.